Alright, today I'll be discussing basic rigging in Toonboom, and today's lesson will be discussing animated layers, node view, hierarchy, pegs, and pivots. Before anything else, I'd like to show you the work in progress of the 2D animation class for this particular semester. These are works done in Toonboom. So the animation production is done in Toonboom. The post-production is done in Adobe, Premiere, and After Effects. I'll be just showing you a short preview of the works of the students. So this is done by Leon. Next, this is done by the group of Shirley and Brian Budol. Then this one is done by the group of Ralen Karandang. Alright, so these are just short previews of the scenes that they're working on. So I hope you enjoyed viewing it. So anyway, let's proceed to the lesson. Alright, so in Toonboom, you can animate using cutouts of different parts of a particular character or objects that you'd want to move inside Toonboom. So first, let's try to understand what is a basic rigging. Okay, so a rig is actually a cutout or a template of your character. So it can be an object such as this crane that I actually created earlier, okay, or a character as such that each of these parts are cut out from each other. Okay, so each of these parts are connected through different layers and arranged in hierarchy in order to animate, known as cutout animation. Okay, so most animation done on TV network and Cartoon Network actually uses cutout animation. It is until recently that they are actually mixing frame by frame and cutout in their works. Okay, so they're mixing two techniques in order to make a better work in animation, right? So with that, let's proceed to the next. Okay, so what are animated layers? All right, so in our timeline, you can see here that each of these layers contain a drawing object. All right, so I actually have labeled them already or named them. So these layers contain each drawing object, which allows you to move in order for you to animate. Right? As you can see, the pivots here are not yet fixed in the right positions. We will move these pivots later when we discuss hierarchy and pegs. Right? So I'm just showing you that each of these layers can contain different drawing objects. Right? And if you would want to add layers, so these are, you go here in the plus sign, click here. Either you'd want to add a bone, a camera, a color card, or a drawing, or a group, or a kinematic output, or a peg. Alright, so this is where you would want to add a layer depending on what you would want it to be. Okay, so let me show you the contents of each of the layers. So let's start first with the wheel. Alright, the wheel has like 5 objects, sorry. So there are 5 objects. So there are 4 wheels and a track. Alright, so these objects can be in a single layer. If you have no intentions of animating this object separately, you can have them put together in one single layer. Alright, and you can animate this if you want to. Alright, so in this animated layers, right, it allows you to animate in the timeline. Right, so before we do some animation, let's try to fix first the parts of this particular crane. Right, so this particular part is the base, and this is the arm 1. So this is the arm. Okay, let me just select this and move it to the side. Right, this is arm 2. Let's position it. Okay, so the pivot of this particular arm is on the right part, so you could actually move it. Then this part is called arm 3. Right, so then these two claws are in different layers. So this is claw 2 and this is claw 1. Alright, so this particular claw track or claw tank needs to be set into a hierarchy. Alright, so let's look into, right, so those are the animated layers. Right, then you can also, by the way, rearrange the layers. Alright, so let's say for example these two claws are under this particular layer, the arm 3. So if you would want to show the claw, okay, on top of the arm 3, you can click and drag, so you could see here that these claw parts are on top of this particular layer. Alright, so you can move these layers in order for you to arrange its hierarchy. Right, so let me just bring it back on top of claw 1 and claw 1 and 2. Right, so in the layers you can also like hide objects by clicking this eye. You can lock them. Alright, so let's now proceed to the node view. I'm just giving you a brief overview of what we are going to use when we set up this character for rigging. Alright, so here in our node view, you can see here that these layers are also represented here in the node view. Right, so each of the node view that you see here is called an element. In the animation timeline, these are called layers, but on the node view they are called elements. Alright, so like what we did earlier, we actually moved the claw layer on top of the arm 3, so it becomes visible on top of claw 3. Right, here in this node view we can also do the same thing. Right, so if you want to pan your view on the node view, you need to press your middle mouse and hold. Right, zoom in and out if you want to see the rest. Okay, so if we wish to put this back behind claw 3, what we can do here is move this behind the arm 3. Right, so you can actually move the element behind the object. Right, so for this to the right, okay, would be the bottommost layer. So as you can see here, the track is at the bottom. The leftmost node would be the top of the layer. Alright, so this particular composite actually shows all of these objects. Alright, and this display, if it's removed, so when you click and hold and drag to let go, it actually not really remove, but it doesn't display the objects, but it's still there. Right, you just need to click on the element and stick it back to the display node. Right, so we can actually like look into the different tools here in the node view. The first tool here is enable, then you have disable. Okay, so let's say if we select all of it, right, so it actually hides it. Then you click back on enable, it actually shows it. So click on arm 3, right, so it disables it. Then you click back, so it shows it back. Right, then you can also select all of the nodes and order node view up. Okay, so it actually arranges the nodes. Oops, wait, it arranges the nodes. Wait, let me select all of it. Alright, so it arranges the node in a, sort of like a tree-like organization or hierarchy. Okay, there's no hierarchy yet, so it's just that it makes the view look neater or cleaner. All right, so when you select this, right, and order node view down, right, so overlap. Okay, so it doesn't really like, there's not much of a difference between two unless you have a lot of nodes here. Okay, so what else? Okay, you can use this cutter, cable cutter. So click that, so it cuts the element away from the composite, so you could actually disable it, click, and bring it back on our composite. Alright, so since in basic rigs you need to create hierarchies, and there are two ways of doing that. Okay? You can create a hierarchy through the animated layers, okay, by finding first which one is the root controller. Alright, so which would be the parent that you would want to move, that will move all of these objects. Alright, so let me just bring this back, the claw. Alright, okay, so before we do the hierarchy, let's just adjust the pivots first. Right, so if you would see when you click on the objects, the pivots are out of place. Alright, I've disabled the animation. Okay, so now we are at the transform. So let's fix the pivot points of these objects. Right, so the way we move the pivot point is we click on the advanced animation tools. Okay, if you don't see it, you just go to Windows, Tools bar, and go to the advanced animation. Okay, so click on the move and put the pivot point on this particular area. Then let's click on the next one and fix the pivot point. Alright. Oops. The way you adjust the pivot point is by clicking the center of the transform tool. Alright. So that you will not be moving the object. Instead, you're moving the pivot point. Okay. So let's adjust the pivot point for arm 3. The base. Let's just put the base somewhere around here. And arm 1 somewhere around here. Okay. The reason why it has to be here because we want to this to rotate like this, right? And this one would rotate like that, and this would rotate like this. Okay, this particular part, and the claw would rotate like that. It closes and opens, right? All right. So for the wheel, alright, let's move the pivot point right in the center. Alright, so that is how you fix the pivot points. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is set this in a hierarchy using the animation layers. Alright, so what we'd want to do is have this 2 claws parented to arm 3. Alright, so you want to like select claw 1 and hold, left click and hold on top of arm 3, then click on claw 2, then click and drag not on top of claw 1 but on top of arm 3. So what it does is it actually parents the object, okay, those 2 objects to arm 3 instead of parenting claw 2 on top of claw 1. So what happens if we do that is when you move claw 1, it actually moves claw 2, right? And if you would notice, whenever you parent animated layers on each other, there is a tendency of having the pivot points out of place. Alright, so you could either like move it back here in this position. Okay, alright, let me take out the parenting from claw 1. Alright, so this, oops, this would be like moved here. Okay, I know this is not an efficient way of doing hierarchy. Hierarchies, it's much better if it's done with pegs. Alright, so I'm just showing you that you could actually parent them with one another, right? So let's parent arm 3 to arm 1, right? So arm 3 to arm 2, right? So arm 3, let's drag it on top of arm 2. Alright. Okay. Now, if you would see here that we can no longer see arm 3 to be on top of arm 2, right? If you can see here that the parenting wouldn't allow us to do that, right? So that's one advantage of animated layers, right? But let's just continue parenting it. Okay, so arm 2, then arm 1. All right, So when you click on arm, okay, then click on arm 2, arm 3, alright? So it actually moves in hierarchy, right? Then let's parent arm 1 to the base. Okay. So let's move it here. So whenever you click the base, the whole thing actually moves, right? Then let's attach the wheel and the track onto the base. Alright. Okay, so when we select the base, it actually moves. When we select on arm 2, you can actually move it. Arm 1, alright. Then arm 1, arm 3, claw, alright. So you can see here that they are actually in a hierarchy, right? So in the node view, it might look like a tangled mess right now, but you have to find a way of arranging them in order for you to view each of the objects, right? So let's say you have here arm 3, right? Let's try and move it on top. Okay. Would it still move? Yeah, it does. So you can still arrange the layers, okay, in terms of hierarchy. Right. So the question now here is, what's the difference between an animated layer and a peg? So if we use a peg instead of animated layers, what difference does it make? Right, so or what could be the advantage of using pegs instead of animated layers in hierarchy, right? So the difference between these two, between the node, the pegs and the layers, is that drawing layers, when animated, okay, when you animate it, the animation is in the object. Okay, so if ever you would want, for example, create another animation, but you don't want to throw the animation away, if you're using animated layers, you would have to redo the animation for that particular layer. Unlike with a node, if you animate a node, you can detach the node from the hierarchy and keep it to the side and make another node and attach it to the object, and it will keep and you can actually do another animation on that particular node. Okay, it sounds a bit complicated, but later when we attach this on the nodes, I'll show you how it actually works. Okay, so the difference is pegs contains motion paths, right, while animated layers contains objects, okay, can be animated, but when you have to redo an animation, you have to erase your keyframes. But with pegs, you can make another peg for your animation, attach it, and detach it whenever you want to. Okay, so that is, in theory first, but we'll do that later. Right? So here you can see the hierarchy of the animated layer. So you have the base, the arm 2, arm 3. The arm 3 is not, the claw are not arranged like this, because we would want arm 3 to be controlling the claw 2, claw 1, right? And the main controller would be the base, and the base is also parented. The wheel and the track is parented to the base. Alright, so we want the base to be the main controller. Okay, so I arranged it like this so that we can see the hierarchy of each parts and which are the parts being attached to. Alright, so if let's say I select all of this, and order node view up, okay, you can see it's like also arranged the way I did, but it's arranged sideways, diagonally. Okay, but I'm more comfortable seeing this is attached to that one, the arm is attached to, like this one is attached to this one, arm 2 and arm 3, and claw is attached like so. Okay, so I would see these two things are attached to this. Alright, and this two objects are attached to this particular object. Alright, so let's try and use the pegs. Okay, so let's use the cutter. Alright, so now every peg is removed. Okay, let's disable the cutter. Now what we want to do is create nodes. Alright, so the way we create nodes is we either go here, insert nodes, so insert pegs, insert pegs, so control P. Alright, so the way you add pegs is by going here, insert peg. Alright, so it says here control P. Right, so let's do that. Shortcut is control P. The names of the layer actually is adopted by the peg. Right, so arm 3, control P. Okay, control P. Control P. Alright. Then this two, control P, control P. Alright. Alright, so now we can see here that we have pegs here for each of the drawing layers. Alright. So now the next thing that we have to do is parent the arm peg to the claw pegs. Alright, so let's do it here in the node view, which makes it a lot easier. Alright, so let us parent the arm by clicking and dragging. Alright, if you would notice, the rig is now out of place. Alright, because the pivots, the pegs has their own pivot points, which we will arrange later. Okay, so let's take the arm 2, stick it to arm 3, arm 1, stick it to arm 2, base to arm 1, then base peg to track and the wheel. Alright, let's go to our objects here and arrange the pivot points. Okay, so let's move our base, our arm, arm 3. Alright, and let's select on the pegs. Alright, so the pivot points are out of place, so let's fix that. Okay. Arm 3, pivot point, arm 2, arm 1, the base, track, and the wheel. Alright, so let's click on the transform and check our pivots. You have to be careful when you select your objects, because whenever we do this, we are actually selecting on the drawing layers instead of the pegs, and we should be animating on our pegs. Alright, so in order for us to avoid clicking on the drawing layers, we can actually disable our drawing layers so that we will just be animating on the arm. Alright, so let's go to edit, preferences. Alright, so we have here preferences. Go to advanced. Make sure that the element node animate using animation tools is deselect. Okay, it's removed, so to deselect this, remove the check, then click OK. Then we'll go to each of our layers and disable animate using animation tools. When you do that, you would see that the animation tools are disabled. Okay, so remove or disable it, you will not see the animation tools here. So they're all disabled. If it's checked, it's enabled. So remove the disable animate using animation tools. Okay, so double click, unchecked, double click. Okay. Remove, click, okay, click, remove, disable, click, click on the yellow box. Okay, in the controls, disable the animation tools. Alright, so let's see. The arm here. Alright, so let's disable that. Okay. Anyway, let me hide my my screen. Alright. Okay. So now, let me just remove the keyframe. So this is delete keyframe or F7. Okay. So delete keyframe. Let's enable current frame. Okay. And go to transform. So here we have our hierarchy, right? So we have here the base, base object, the peg, and the drawing object, right? So peg and the drawing. There's a good way of there's a nice way of arranging this visually so that we don't get confused a lot. Alright, so we can either group this like Control G, right? So there's an advantage and disadvantage of using this. If you are in the general view of your nodes, you have to go in. Okay, you have to go in and select whatever objects you like. Then you have to go out in order for you to select the rest. But I think what's more convenient for me is to, just have a visual cue for me to actually understand the groupings of each of the nodes. So when you go to here, insert and backdrop, it actually shows you a box. Okay, this box allows you to put a container around your objects. Okay, it's like you're grouping your objects, but you're grouping it visually. Okay, so select control and click in the nodes, put it inside the box, and when you click, it actually is inside this particular box. Okay, or backdrop. You can change the color. Okay, You can label it as arm 3. Okay. Then arm 2. Alright. Arm 1. So you can do the same thing. You can group it. Not group, but group it visually. So have a backdrop here. You can resize it. Click outside of the backdrop. Click on the corner to resize it. Okay. Click outside. Click the box. So anything that is inside the backdrop is sort of like trapped inside that particular backdrop. Okay. So let's change the color to purple. Let's select these two, insert, then backdrop. Let's resize it, put it here in our arm 1. Make sure that you fit the nodes well. So click, then yellow, then arm 1. Okay. This one is arm 2. Okay. Excuse me. So for this particular main controller, let's just put all of them in one backdrop. Okay. So here you go. Okay. So when you select this, so they're all inside. Click on the backdrop once, then resize it, then change the color to orange, label it as base, or let's just label it as root. Okay, so now when we have this backdrop, somehow we are visually aware of the arrangement and groupings, instead of going to use grouping grouping the nodes inside particular group. So I think this is, for me, this is my preferred arrangement. Okay, so I could actually see all of my parts here. All right, so after we disabled the animation for the drawing objects, let's try now to animate each of the parts. Okay. Alright, so let's check if the claw animates, if it moves. Okay. The arm 3, arm 1, okay. Then the base. Okay. So let's try, let me hide the lecture notes. Okay, so let's animate this crane from left to right. Okay, so the way you animate this is by adding keyframes. Okay, so we need to animate it on the base, right, on the root. Okay, so let's click on our base. Okay, then let's add a base peg. All right, then let's click on the keyframe. Let's move the timeline to 50. Okay, so you will not see any animation here in the drawing area or drawing layer. You would see it here in the base. Okay, if you would notice, if you're selecting in the camera view, okay, it seems like that you're selecting the drawing layers, but when you actually try and move this, they actually animate on the pegs, right? Since we've disabled the animation tools, all right? So here, so there's a keyframe. We can delete a keyframe. So click on the arm tool. Is in base? All right. So click on the base. Delete keyframes. All right. So it's F7. F6 to add a keyframe. Okay. So select, click on play. So it animates. Right. Then let's try and move the arms. Right. Alright, so you can do the same thing with the other parts. So you want to rotate this. Let's make it let's make the claw go open, close and open. Alright. Click play. Alright, so that's how you set up your hierarchy in pegs, and that is how you do a basic animation for your rig. So I guess that's it for this particular lesson. So I hope you've learned something. Thank you very much and have a good day.